We're excited to announce that our very own podcasting platform, Zencastr, has become a new sponsor to the show. Check out the podcast's discount link in our show notes and stay tuned for why we love using Zen for the podcast.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello out there in Archaeology Podcast land. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel. I'm the president and founder of the California Rock Art Foundation. And what we do is we identify, evaluate, manage, and conserve rock art both in Alta California and in Baja California. We conduct field trips, we have trainings, exercise, we do research, and in every way possible, we try to preserve, protect, and coordinate treasures of Alta and Baja California rock art, of which there are many and diverse. We also work closely with Native Americans and partner with them to recognize and protect sacred sites. So for more info about the fabulous California Rock Art Foundation, you can go to carockart.org. Also, I'm open to give me a call, 805-312-2261. We would welcome sponsorship or underwriting, helping us to defray the costs of our podcasts, and also membership in California Rock Art Foundation. And of course, donations, since we are a 501c3 nonprofit scientific and educational corporation. God bless everyone out there in podcast land.
You're listening to the Rock Art Podcast. Join us every week for fascinating tales of rock art, adventure, and archaeology. Find our contact info in the show notes and send us your suggestions.
Well, welcome, podcast listeners. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel Gold. I'm introducing you to the Rock Art Podcast, episode number 61. Our guest scholar is the president of Legion of Mary, Bakersfield, California, and her name is Virginia Gonzales, and she will talk about her own personal journey in terms of her direction, in terms of her theology. And we're also going to talk about the Virgin of Guadalupe and that famous image that harkens back to the year 1531, Juan Diego, and also gives us a fast forward to understanding the Mexican people and the understanding of how religion and theology and symbolism has an amazing transformation quality. Well, hello out there in Archaeology Podcast land. And we are blessed and honored to have a wonderful guest. Her name is Virginia Gonzales, and that's Gonzales. She's the president of the Legion of Mary in Bakersfield, California. The Curia regional director of that group. And this is a group of Catholic individuals, members of an organization that has been around for 100 years and has millions of members worldwide. And I'm actually a member of it as well. And this particular journey will be one where we're talking about religion and also sacred narrative and imagery and the creation of, I would say, replacement or complement of different religious elements and significance of those elements to the people who practice the faith of Catholicism worldwide. So we're going to talk about the Virgin of Guadalupe, which of course is probably one of the primary images that the Mexican people and others all over the world find very important and reifying, and is a central element of their religious metaphor. So, Virginia, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, brother.
Thank you. Hello, sister. One of the things we recognized just this morning by trying to get ready for this podcast is we have Virginia, right?
Yes.
So we have that part of the exercise. And when I came to faith in Catholicism, I took the name of Guadalupe, and I really didn't understand its significance at the time. So we've got both parts of the exercise going for us. Virginia, why don't you tell them a bit about your background and how you perhaps came to faith and the role that the Blessed Mother has had in your life?
Well, I was a cradle Catholic, and my mother, Virginia, was her name also. She visited Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I had a picture, but I lost it. she always held a special place in my heart. And then my great-grandfather, he had a little shrine outside in one of his yards by the grape or the vineyard,
And where was this?
This was in
Where was that shrine?
Bakersfield. Yeah, he built an adobe house. Okay. I grew up in an adobe house, and in one of the yards there across from the home that he built, he dedicated it to the Blessed Mother and, of course, to our Lord Jesus Christ. And so I would look on her image quite often. Back then, I used to have a crossed eye, and I would go to the shrine there and cry my little eyes out because the children would make fun of me. And that was basically how I got to know the Blessed Mother. And then later on, during confirmation, my confirmation name is Concepcion.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I was born on December the 8th. So my great-grandfather wanted my mama to call me Concepcion, but she chose not to. And my tata, Andres Saavedra, said, "What?" Of course, in Spanish. So I was named Virginia. My middle name, Ann, came from the nurse, and Gonzales, of course, came from both my parents. And that was it. Until I ended up going to my, I guess it's confirmation classes. And in the second year, they ask you to choose a name after a saint. And I chose Concepcion, which is conception in English.
So you grew up in Bakersfield, correct?
Oh, yeah. Born and raised.
And you've had a bit of a journey, into the religious realm, haven't you? It's been sort of a major transformation.
Oh, yes.
Give us a few little sound bites or little clips of that, could you?
Sure. After my parents died, we were orphaned. I was 15 and my brothers were younger. I kind of fell away because in foster homes, they had different religions or whatever, and they didn't take us to Mass. And so the only reason I did my confirmation at the age of 16 was because my best friend's mother brought me back to the church. And then after I made my confirmation, I fell away and I became a great, great sinner. I mean, I did everything, it seems like.
In what way?
And I stayed away from the church.
In what way were you a sinner?
Oh, I used to be an alcoholic. I wasn't going to Mass. I wasn't worshiping the Lord, though I did have a lot of personal talks with him. Mm-hmm. But basically, I stayed away from the church because, when you are involved in alcoholism, you kind of tend to go the wrong route. And that's what I did. I ventured into everything.
When you say everything, what specifically did you traffic in? You don't have to get too detailed, but what kinds of what kinds of things were you into?
Oh, I was lying. I don't know about so much stealing, but I had very low self-esteem. I was crying mourning over the loss of my mother because that threw us into the foster home system.
Oh, wow.
Because my father had died when I was 8.
So you had a very rough beginning, very rough.
Oh yeah. I was working in San Jose. I moved away from Bakersfield and moved to San Jose. And when I was working there at the hospital, I took out a prayer. I started praying to the Blessed Mother, and prayer for me is just talking to my mama, And because she is the mother of our Lord Jesus. And in the Legion of Mary, it says, to Christ through Mary, because that's her son. She brings us all to her son.
So we see Mary as sort of an intermediary or a liaison, right?
And she loves her son so dearly. There is no jealousy between mother and son, that the Lord allows her to intercede for her children, because she did become our mother. And so I was just reflecting on how I used to spend a lot of my time. I ended up getting into drugs, and besides my alcoholism, and I went to jail, and I served, I don't know, maybe 53 days. And that was the longest term, even though I was in and out of jail. It was
wow.
It was a long time for me, even though I never made it to prison, thank God.
But you did go to jail, and you did have, altercations, and this was a rough and tumble, very unorthodox, not unorthodox, but it's a sort of a way of living that. What transformed you? How did you come to faith, and how did you connect with the Virgin of Guadalupe?
While I was staying there at Elmwood Women's Facility, these two ladies over the loudspeaker, they say, if anyone wants to pray the rosary, sign up and you go to trailer so-and-so. So I signed up, and then I walked over to the trailer, and to my surprise, there were two Filipina women. And they had a little statue of Mary and two electric candles, some flowers. And they gave me my first rosary and a little pamphlet on how to pray the rosary. And I was the only one who showed up. And they said they were from the Legion of Mary. I go,
oh my word, come on.
And so, I prayed with them, and then I went off and I started praying my rosary from that day on. And then years later, I came across, because the Lord had changed my life. So I came across a person that gave me a telephone number for the Legion of Mary. And her name was Dada, and she was Filipina. And so I called the number, and another Filipina lady, she answered the phone and says, we're having a meeting tonight. Where do you live? I'll pick you up. So I went to the meeting, and I stayed there 12 weeks. And I finally said my promise. As soon as I said my promise, they voted me in or elected me as president. And so I stayed with the Legion, and that was in the year.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the year 2000 when I made my promise.
Wow. Virginia, we're very parallel in terms of a lot of the interesting things. And I know that people are listening for a rock art podcast, and they're going, how does this relate to rock art? Well, it does in a big way, because what we do as anthropologists and archaeologists is study native religion. And the native religion that became the native religion was, in fact, Catholicism in about the 1500s. And there was the largest conversion ever in the history of the world was the Native Americans who lived in Mexico, who became Catholics. It was about 5 to 7 million people, and that created the Mexican people. And so that's rather spectacular and amazing. Now, for me personally, when we're talking about some of this, the reason I chuckled so much is, of course, I was raised Jewish, right? And being Jewish is about as far afield from Christianity as you could possibly get. Now, through an interesting series of sort of, elective options, I became Christian, but not Catholic. But then ultimately, I came home to Rome, right? So to the original religion of Jesus, and the one that's stuck around for 2,000 years. But when I came to Bakersfield, now Bakersfield is my home as well. And for those that don't know much about Bakersfield, over half of the population is Mexican. And we're talking about a population that runs about 400 or 500,000 or more people just in this one city alone. So we have a tremendous Mexican-American population. there are 9 churches, 9 Mexican Catholic churches within a stone's throw. I mean, within 5, 10, maybe 20 minutes of my home here in Bakersfield. Anyways, I thought all that is sort of valuable information to contextualize some of the stuff we're talking about. So please continue, Virginia. Where do we go from there?
After I met the ladies, I didn't see them again. Yeah, I became an active member. And then there was a deacon that came to visit us in one of our meetings. And I was going on my 7th year as a Legion of Mary member. And he said, well, you've been a felon. You know, your record will be cleared in 7 years. You know, we need detention ministers to go into the jails. So, you know, I followed his lead, and then I started going back to Elmwood, but as a detention minister. And then,
oh my word!
Yeah, and then I was appointed, and I remember that day well because as soon as the doors closed behind me, they clanked, you know, the metal, and I had I started getting goosebumps on my back, and I started to get tense, and then I breathed a sigh of relief because I said to myself, "Oh yeah, I can walk out." So it was good.
Those doors are not locked and solid. Yeah, exactly. So another reason we're talking about the Virgin of Guadalupe right now is because coming up is her feast day, and also that particular date is one that's significant in terms of the cosmology or the sort of the worldview of indigenous people, as being exactly the date when the winter solstice occurs as well. So just by way of cosmic interchange and a reason for connecting on this basis. I think we'll stop it there, Virginia, and pick it up in the next segment. See you in the flip-flop, gang.
Chris Webster here for the Archaeology Podcast Network. We strive for high-quality interviews and content so you can find information on any topic in archaeology from around the world. One way we do that is by recording interviews with our hosts and guests located in many parts of the world all at once. We do that through the use of Zencastr. That's Zencastr. Zencastr allows us to record high-quality audio with no stress on the guest. Just send them a link to click on, and that's it. Zencastr does the rest. They even do automatic transcriptions. Check out the link in the show notes for 30% off your first 3 months, or go to zencastr.com and use the code ROCKART. Looking to expand your knowledge of X-rays and imaging in the archaeology field? Then check out An Introduction to Paleoradiography, a short online course offering professional training for archaeologists and affiliated disciplines. Created by archaeologist, radiographer, and lecturer James Elliott, the content of this course is based upon his research and teaching experience in higher education. It is approved by the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists as 4 hours of training. That's in the UK, for those of you that don't know. So don't miss out on this exciting opportunity for professional and personal development. For more information on pricing and course structure, visit paleoimaging.com. That's PALEO imaging.com, and look for the link in the show notes to this episode.
Well, welcome back to the Rock Art Podcast on the Archaeology Podcast Network. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Garfinkel. I'm founder of the California Rock Art Foundation and its president. And yet we have another president here with us, Virginia Gonzales, and she is the president of the regional offices of Legion of Mary in Bakersfield, California. And she is our guest scholar of sorts, and we're blessed to have her on board. Virginia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Good to have you back on board. How'd you like that first segment?
Well, it's the first time. I hope I did well. Just telling my story.
I think you did great. How many podcasts have you been on?
This one.
Yes. Well, welcome to the world of podcasting. It's amazing.
Thank you, brother, for being my friend.
Yes, and thank you for honoring me with your with your repartee and your reflections on your life. I really appreciate this. I think in this segment, what we're going to try to do is tell the story of the Virgin of Guadalupe and Juan Diego, and maybe try to talk about why that image plays so profoundly in the culture of the world of Catholicism, and especially in the native world in Mexico and in the world of Mexican Americans as well. So, Virginia, it's yours.
Okay, well, I believe it's because not only of her brownish complexion, many say she looks more Jewish than anything, and that the clothing that she wears goes back 2,000 years ago. So, of course, she added some symbolism. And what was interesting about her that captured my attention is that her hands were in prayer, and that she's looking down with her head tilted in a humble way.
It's a bit of humility, isn't it?
Yeah. And not only that, but I believe she shows us love.
So how did that image come about? And what do we know about Juan Diego back in 1531 in terms of who this individual was and what they experienced?
Well, she came about Juan Diego as he was strolling through Tepayec Hill. And
now Juan Diego was a convert whose language was Nahuatl, and he was one of the earlier converts to Catholicism. And he lived, I think, maybe 5-10 miles away from church, didn't he?
He lived 9 miles away, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And so anyway, on her first apparition, he hears music and it's beautiful. And then it stops and he sees a bright light and brilliant clouds. And the light seems to become brighter and brighter. And then she appears, and in Nahuatl, he asks Juan Diego, "Juanito, my little son, whom I love tenderly like a little child, where are you going?" And he replied that he was going to go learn more about his teachings at the church. He was on his way to Mass and to study. And then she said, "Know for certain, littlest of my sons, that I am the perfect and perpetual Virgin Mary, Mother of the true God, through whom everything lives, the Lord of all things near and far, the Master of heaven and earth. I wish and intensely desire that in this place my sanctuary be erected. Here I will demonstrate, I will exhibit, I will give you all my love, my compassion, my help, and my protection to the people." And I believe it goes on, but I believe that, that's where she's saying that she is the protector of the Americas, not just the Mexican people or the Indians of Mexico, but of all of America.
All of the
North,
Americas,
South,
North,
Central.
South, and Central, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, when she's talking to Juan Diego, she's being perceived as some sort of a remarkable supernatural manifestation. She's brighter than bright, and they're there at this Tepeyac, which is a hill, and one that was actually the site of a lunar goddess and a pyramid of the moon there. So it had an ancient association as well. So I guess Juan Diego has his walking papers and his responsibilities. What happens next?
Well, he goes to visit the bishop, Sumaraga, and all he has is problems. They make him wait and wait till all of the people ahead of him are seen. But he goes in successfully and asks the bishop to erect a church for the Blessed Mother so that people can worship her son. And that doesn't work very well. So he gets sent off. And So he's kind of disappointed, you know.
Yeah, Bishop Zumarraga wasn't in a very good posture, because I understand that he didn't have very many converts, and he was very, very concerned that his days were numbered there, and that they were having nothing but tremendous ill will and adversity at every level in terms of his role there as sort of a counselor and leader of the domestic church, the new church, the Catholic Church in the Americas. So I guess Juan Diego goes back,
right,
and then tries again. I guess has another journey, right?
Oh, definitely. And then, even though the bishop had said, yes, and I'm listening to you, you know, but things didn't go well. So by the third apparition, Mother Mary says, so be it, my son. Come back tomorrow morning, and I will give you the sign which will assure him, and he will no longer doubt you.
So what she's saying, I think, is that she can provide him with the physicality, the sort of something that will demonstrate to the bishop that this is a true miracle of God. So what happens next, Virginia? I guess Juan Diego meets with the Bishop Zumarraga and attempts to do so, I think, again, but in turn, he goes back again and tries to avoid the connection with the Virgin of Guadalupe, yes?
Yes, because his uncle was ill.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to go get a priest or someone to come
give him his last rites. Yeah,
right.
So he was very, very ill. So then during his absence, when he tries to avoid connecting with the lady, she shows up anyways. And somehow,
well, actually, he's on the other side of the hill. He's on the other side, and that's
right.
when the Blessed Mother appears to him there, and basically tells him to go on his journey and to go see the bishop again, and to not worry about his uncle, because he's basically cured, and to believe in that, and go on his journey to see the bishop, which he does. And of course, the bishop asks for proof. And
so does he get to see the bishop again?
We're about to approach the fourth apparition.
Okay.
And so then the Blessed Mother has him gather Castilian roses up on the hill, and he only the Castilian roses.
Right. Now we're here in December, in the winter.
Yes, and I believe that there were no Castilian roses available in Mexico at that time. They were all in Spain.
Yes.
So that's one of the miracles.
Yes. The next thing is they're exotic roses that don't grow in Mexico anyways. They couldn't be growing, and they certainly couldn't be flowering in the winter there in this almost
right.
Rather desert area, but very cold and difficult. But yet he gathers them up, puts them in his tilma, and a tilma is sort of a yucca coat that the native people would wear.
Yes, almost like a sarape, but it's made out of cactus fibers.
And he plans on bringing those back to Bishop Zumarraga and demonstrating the validity of his testimony. So then what happens?
So anyway, he presents him to the Blessed Mother, and she rearranges the roses in the tilma, and then she ties the ends of the cloak in a knot and has Juan Diego carry him to the bishop. And that's on the fourth apparition. And then he goes and he meets with the bishop, and as usual, he's always the last one chosen to speak. So anyway, when he finally meets the bishop, his tilma is opened up and the roses fall out, and what's left on the impression on the 12th of December is the image of the Blessed Mother on his tilma.
So this image of the Blessed Mother on his tilma What does it look like? What colors is it? What is it composed of? And what is the response of the people in the room to seeing such a remarkable and miraculous phenomenon?
Well, I'm sure the bishop knelt amazed at because I'm sure the painting that is heavenly, because it wasn't produced by any human hands, appeared, and with the symbolism and the roses themselves that fell from the tilma, you could see the surprise and the way the onlookers were looking, because with science nowadays, when I don't know what machinery they used, but they pinpointed and looked into her eyes, and you could see the shadows and reflections of and the features of the people in the courtyard when the Blessed Mother's picture appeared on the tilma. It was like a photographic image in her eyes.
Definitely. So it's rather remarkable in terms of the whole imagery that goes on there, that we have this yucca coat known as a tilma, and it has this remarkable picture of the Virgin of Guadalupe, as she is called, and in a stance of humility, as you put it, bent down with her hands together. But I guess behind her, they talk about the sun and the rays of the sun appearing, and then perhaps she is standing above a crescent moon. And in general, this is an image that appears not as a Euro-American individual, but more akin to some sort of a native person in her coloring, I believe. That's something that is emphasized. So I think in terms of the perspective or imagery, it's appealing to native people, and it seems to make some sense. And also, it touches upon a number of symbols that are quite common and understandable to the indigenous people who were speaking the language of Nahuatl, as I understand it.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of symbolism that they understood from just seeing the image itself.
Yeah, she's pregnant. She's belted with a black belt with going down. It shows she's pregnant. And over her womb is the famous sort of 5-in-1 cross that has to do with a creator being, a supernatural God existing within her womb. And in turn, the posture and the way in which it's being communicated is such that this is a loving God, and not a God per se, but someone who is an emissary or some sort of representative to the God of the universe, which actually is going to be birthed from her womb. And I think they understood all of that just from looking at the picture. At least that's the way I understand it from my reading and messages and understanding of sort of the indigenous thinking about this particular image. Well, in the next section, we'll follow up and talk about the meaning of the symbolism, some of the scientific studies that have been done on that image, and why that this particular image is important in our understanding of what we call syncretism. See you in the flip-flop, gang.
You may have heard my pitch for membership. It's a great idea and really helps out. However, you can also support us by picking up a fun t-shirt, sticker, or something from a large selection of items from our TeePublic store. Head over to ArchPodNet.com/shop for a link. That's ArchPodNet.com/shop to pick up some fun swag and support the show.
Well, welcome back, podcast listeners. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel, and this is the third and final segment of the 3 segments on episode 61 with our guest scholar and close friend of mine, Virginia Gonzales, who is the president of the Legion of Mary in Bakersfield. And we're talking about the Virgin of Guadalupe. We're talking about the sacred narrative. We're talking about the story. We're talking about the history of this image and how it interplays and interfingers with the development of the Catholic religion, but also the development of the integration between Native American religion and Catholicism into a new and different phenomenon. So, Virginia, what I'd like to do in this particular segment is talk a bit about some of the symbolism and also some of the scientific analysis that's been done on the image. and sort of also sort of do a little journey on sort of the history surrounding some of our understanding of what that image might mean. But I'd like you to open this up and talk about what you feel and know and connect with from those people who revere this image. And why would that be so?
I believe because the Blessed Mother appeared in Mexico, and the Blessed Mother brought thousands and thousands of converts to her son. And at about the same time that we had lost some Catholics to the Protestant religion, so she in turn brought even more Catholics. And so anyway,
I think the conversion was something like between 5 and 9 million native people came to the Christian/Catholic faith just in Mexico. And that's the largest conversion in the history of the world in terms of sort of a massive group of people converting to a new theology. Now, also of great interest, you're right, it was coordinate with, consistent, and at the same time as Martin Luther, his Protestantism and that whole development of that, where there was the falling away
right
in the old world. So we had the new world and the old world going on simultaneously. Yeah. Now, being a novice to this religion, and my side, I knew really nothing about the Virgin of Guadalupe. And all I knew is there was this funny picture that appeared in the back of all these, Mexican trucks and other pictures like that. And I'm going, what exactly is that? And what does that mean? And why do I see this picture so commonly throughout the Mexican culture? So why is that, Virginia?
Well, because first of all, it means that we as Mexicans are not just the least of her people, her children. We are her children. And every time that the Blessed Mother appears throughout the world, she is given a new title. And that reaffirms our belief in Christ and the motherly protection and love that she has for each and every one of her children. After all, the image on the tilma, she was only 4'8" tall, and she appeared to be about 15 years old or so. Yeah. And the tilma was made of fibers of the maguey plant.
Yes. Maguey, yes.
Maguey? Oh.
Yeah, the maguey or sort of a yucca.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's maguey/yucca. And in every other instance, when they've replicated this picture on that kind of coarse weave canvas, it decomposes within 5 years. It falls apart.
Yeah, it said basically it deteriorates within 20 years or so. Yeah, but now it's been over 450 years.
Right, and from 1531 to today's date, and in some ways the actual image is as bright and as vital and as astounding as it was the first day it was created.
Oh yeah, and tests have been done, and it's not a paint. It wasn't done by man.
Painting, no, it's some sort of supernatural coloring. It's an absolute
yes
scientific miracle. The other thing that's a scientific miracle about it, which is something that I've gotten very interested in as well, is her eyes.
Yes.
You know about the eyes of the Virgin. So I guess around the turn of the century, an optometrist looked at the image very closely and saw a very tiny image, not microscopic, but nearly so, a very modest image of an individual in one of her eyes. And Jose Asti Tonsman, who was a scientist who studied such images and helped to create them astronomically when we're dealing with some of those capturing images from some of the astronomical elements of some of our missiles and other endeavors of connecting with some of the planets like Mars and also other ones. He knew how to examine this image systematically, enlarge it and examine it, and then identify what he felt were accurate images that were conveyed at the time of the image's manufacture. There's a thing called the Purkinje-Sansom effect, where your eyes look like mirrors. And so they act like mirrors. And if you can look at them very closely, you can actually see what the individual is seeing. Well, that's what's occurring on this image. And you can see Juan Diego, you can see Bishop Zumarraga, you can see a family, you can see another individual who is some sort of a translator / slave who is African American. And all of this is depicted in both eyes in a minuscule way.
Right.
And this is absolutely impossible. There's no other picture of any sort that ever had anything like this, really, in the history of the world, or in anything that would have been captured or done in any fashion except miraculously, as I understand it. Is that kind of what you understand, Virginia?
Yes, I did a study on it years ago. I think it was like 2003 or so. I had to do my senior thesis type but as an artist, you do a series of paintings and stuff. But I did one on Mother Teresa. But before I did those, I took advantage of this art contest that they were going to have. And so I found out about it about the day before it was due. So I did an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And the design on her dress was, like you said, it was the constellation at that precise moment and time back in 1531, December the 12th. And that was amazing. You know, I learned little things, tidbits here and there as I was painting. And when I entered the painting, I ended up winning first prize. And
really? Phenomenal.
Yes. The painting has been lost, but I still have my blue ribbon, and I still have the memory of how I spent my $200 check.
There you go.
But,
See?
yeah.
See? Phenomenal. That's a fantastic story. So, Virginia, we've spent about an hour together reflecting on both the story of Juan Diego and also trying to analyze and reflect on what it meant for him to have met the Virgin of Guadalupe, as it's come to be known, and the effects of that image on the native people and the transformation of their theology. What would you say in reflection or to contextualize the nature of this discussion?
All I have to say is that you should never be afraid. You should love the Blessed Mother as your own mother, no matter what title she has, whether it be Our Lady of Fatima or Our Lady of Guadalupe. I know the Mexican people yell out, "Viva la Virgen de Guadalupe!" And that means that she just lives on in our hearts, you know? So may God bless you all.
That's fantastic.
And thank you, brother, for being patient with me.
No, and thank you for putting up with all the challenges of our technology and weaving an amazing story of the journey, your personal journey, but also the journey of both the tilma and the image, and how that could in fact relate to our study of images and symbolism and the religious theology and how that intertwines. I think we have a model here to better understand what we try to accomplish when we look at both prehistoric and historic rock art images and how that can be conveyed in a living sense. Well, see you next week, gang.
Thanks for listening to the Rock Art Podcast with Dr. Alan Garfinkel and Chris Webster. Find show notes and contact information at www.archpodnet.com/rockart. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing this podcast with your family and friends. This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to archpodnet.com/members for more info.